Hello everyone and welcome to this video where we're going to see what is Windows Virtual Desktop and its main benefits. For the one that wants to know in a nutshell what are the key benefits of Windows Virtual Desktop and doesn't have time to go through the full video, I will give you upfront 5 reasons why to go with Windows Virtual Desktop. Point number 1 is to have multiple users on a client side. Before this, in order to leverage the benefit of having multiple users on a single VM, you had to go for a Windows server. Now, with Windows Virtual Desktop only, you can use a OS client to have multiple users pooled on the same VM. Point number 2, all the backend is given by Microsoft and it's given for free. Yes, for free. Point number 3, it's Azure only solution. As simple as that. Point number 4 is 100% pay-per-use service. If you need it, you pay for it. If you do not need, you stop paying for it. No upfront cost, everything is pay-per-use. Very simple. Point number 5 is super easy to deploy, so you can automate the deployment and then enjoy the weekend with beers with friends. Those are the 5 main points to keep in mind when discussing on WVD. My name is Carlo Garavaglia. Please stay with me on this video if you want to know more. In the meantime, remember to subscribe this channel. Let's start with point 1, right? Windows 10 multi-user. As said, Windows Virtual Desktop leverage a Windows 10 client multi-user. Usually, when you have to provide a Windows 10 or a Windows 10-like environment to your user, what you do is to create a VM with a Windows server on it, enabling the desktop experience. This creates the capability to have the economical benefits in having multiple users on the same VM, but however, this comes with some complexity. Think, for example, if you have to provide to a user a client application that simply doesn't work on a Windows server. You start to smash your head on the wall, try to make this application to work, and also you start to add licensing and cost complexity because maybe you're adding third-party vendors and applications like Citrix, VMware, Avingu, whatever, to make that application work on a client. As you can see here already, we are talking to add third parties, so increasing licensing and technical complexity because you have more things to manage. It will work? Yes. It's more complex? Yes, of course. Let's think the other way around. So for these reasons, or maybe other reasons, you have to provide a true Windows 10 client to your users. What is the solution you go today? Is dedicated VDI, so VDI's environment. You dedicate one VM for each user, and in that VM then you can install your OS client. VDI, however, has that annoying part that compared to a pooled environment, they tend to be expensive because you can't optimize the resources behind. You have to allocate like physical true PCs to your users, the resources for each user. So if that resources are not used, nobody else is using those resources. So at the end, it will be much more expensive than a pooled scenario. Windows Virtual Desktop solves this issue. One way, it gives you a true OS client, so you have your technicalities gone because you're using a true client and not a server client-like. And on the other side, you have the economical benefits because instead of giving single VMs to each user, so 100 users, 100 VMs, you can have pooled sessions on the client. So for managing 100 users, maybe you just need 10 VMs in a pooled environment and that's it. But let me get clear on this point. This doesn't mean that Windows Virtual Desktop technology or solution replace all the third-party vendors. Actually, Microsoft and third-party vendors have a very close relationship because those vendors bring some extra capabilities that maybe WVD Vanilla doesn't have built-in. For example, in some reporting capabilities or image capabilities like using with Citrix. So you can still use third-party vendors that leverage in the background the WVD concept in order to have that nice addition to the solution. It also comes with some psychological part because, for example, you have some people or a lot of people that is already trained with third-party application, like again Citrix or VMware. If you switch to WVD, it's not that you have to retrain all the people to WVD, but you can still leverage your knowledge, your competencies of these vendors on WVD solutions. So it will be much more easy to adopt internally also the technology. If you are a service provider or a managed service provider, you may well know how much remote desktop services license can be annoying because it's also an extra cost you have to pay in order to have these users to connect to the environment, which is server-based. With WVD, this is gone because you don't have anymore a server environment. It's a client environment, so you don't have to pay anymore for that license. Bye-bye RDS. WVD also integrates with technology like FS Logics that Microsoft has bought and integrated in the solution that can allow you to do a lot of interesting things. First thing, you can say goodbye to the UPDs, the user profile. The profile data, information, etc. are contained in a VHD file, in a virtual hard drive file, stored somewhere in a storage array. So you don't have anymore a local profile on the VM. That allows you also to free up space and resources to the VM itself, and also reducing costs because these profiles are attached to the VM every time a user connects and doesn't touch the disk of the VM itself. On the second step, this will be extended to application. So far you still have to create and maintain your gold image with your application and etc. And then when you have to do an update of your corporate application, you have to redo the new image with the new version of the application. And it's coming MSIX up attached, with basically will do with the application the same thing now has been done with the user profiles. So instead to have the application installed in the OS of the VM and managed in gold image, you just put the MSIX of the application somewhere in a storage array, and then when the user connects, system knows what application the user need to have, and through some special APIs that will be attached to the VM, and user will see their application as they are installed on the session host, on their session, and available to be used. This will greatly increase also the management of the VM, because since you don't have anymore the application installed on the gold image, the VM, the session host, gets lighter, and also on governance and management perspective, you get things much more simpler, because instead to have, again, to create VMs, sysprep, and etc., you just go to the storage array, you have your MSIX, you just upgrade or replace the MSIX with a new one, and that's it. The users, next time they log in, they will have their application updated. So the gold image will be basically free of everything. Application profiles will be only the OS itself, and you have only to manage the upgrades. In case you haven't got it, this means a lot better management for the images, because what's left the image? Nothing, just the OS itself. Profiles on VHDs, application on MSIX on another storage, and the OS is just the OS itself. Last but not least, all the things work properly. So everything like Edge, Cortana, Outlook, and etc. works in a shared environment. Or for example, Outlook works in cache mode, so no more need to have an online mode where every time a user login, downloads old emails, also occupying the bandwidth you have, the precious bandwidth you have. In this case, it will be exactly the same experience as opening up a physical PC and just logging to your machine. Point number 2, the backend managed by Microsoft. In the Windows Virtual Desktop solution, the only thing that you have to manage are the session host, customer data, gold images, and the users. All the rest, all the fluffy stuff, is managed by Microsoft. So all the load balancing, connection broker, web access, and etc. you don't see, and you have as a service free from Microsoft. Maybe you already had experience in deploy solution of remote desktop for users, so maybe you know how long you need to deploy all the backend just to make the thing works. And in this case, that part, as I said, by Microsoft. In Windows Virtual Desktop solution, the only thing that you have to handle is the custom data. So session host, data, application, gold images, that's it. I bet there will be some IT guys here watching this video that knows how many hours or days or night have they spent a weekend on deploying remote desktop solution for their customers. Well, this will be far long gone, because with WVD, as we already said, all the backend is managed by Microsoft for free. You only have to care on the data, and doesn't matter if you want to deploy this solution for 1 user or 1 million user, everything is handled in the background by Microsoft. In this way, you can focus on what's really important. What's really important for you? Sell your service, your IPs, your solutions, or manage infrastructure. I bet that since today, the thing that you had to provide remote desktop forced you to provide also management on the backend. So the final goal was sell your solution, but you have somehow stuck on the problems to manage all the backend for selling this solution. Now Microsoft comes with this Windows Virtual Desktop that basically says, okay, dear partners, just focus on your services, on your IPs. We take care of the boring part, because you don't want to have your people, maybe also your expensive people, just to maintain backends. You want them to focus more on creating new service, new technologies, optimize the applications or the services you already have, because your money stays there. Your money doesn't stay in managing the background, right? Also, Microsoft did a very nice Nextra addiction, and this is very specific for the troubleshooting guy, or I would say the poor troubleshooting guy. How many of you have spent hours or nights even trying to understand why something wasn't working, checking all the logs and timestamps and users login from different parts, gateway, web controller, broker access, try to put all together, try to build a story? Well, this is another long forgotten nightmare, because Microsoft introduced diagnostic. With diagnostic, basically, Microsoft is putting a correlation ID to every log this solution is generating and automatically correlate all these logs. So when a user has some problem, raise a ticket, cannot connect, for example, you can, with a simple click or a simple query, you can just find exactly what happened to that user, where he come from, what was using to connect, for example, what are the steps through the system, and where they crashed. Actually, it is very simple and detailed that Microsoft also generated a table that you can just read the error, go to the table, see the solution, and apply the solution. As simple as that. Point 3, WVD is Azure only. Well, there is not a super complex, right? As you are getting benefits from the free Microsoft managed backend in Azure for this solution, why do you think this solution could ever be? However, there could be a scenario where you can have your Windows Virtual Desktop on-premise. This comes with Azure Stack. For the one that doesn't know what Azure Stack is, basically Azure Stack allows you to have a piece of Azure in your data center, and you still manage that with the Azure portal. And when you deploy things, you can select if you want to deploy things in Azure or deploy the things in your Azure, in your rack, in your data set. This is the only way to have pretty much WVD on-prem. Let's move to point number 4, 100% pay-per-use. As all Azure items, being Windows Virtual Desktop and Azure item and Azure solution, it brings with him all the cloud benefits. So while you're using it, you're going to pay for the service, for the resource you're using. While you're not using, so for example, users are not connected and VMs are not turned on, you're not going to pay for the service. This also extends to the licensing part. Since you need a Microsoft 365 license in order to have the users to connect to the WVD environment, those licenses can be added through the CSP program. And within the CSP program, on the license perspective, you are billed on a daily basis. So even on the licensing part, if you sell a service and then that service is not needed anymore, you can just simply cancel the license and you will not pay anymore for that part without any upfront cost. Also, there is another interesting part on licensing perspective. Let's say you have a customer that already has Microsoft 365 license or an eligible WVD license, then you can just simply use this customer license without having to buy a new one or change with different licenses. Last but not least, point number 5, super easy to deploy. Let's start from the basic one. If you want to deploy a full WVD solution manually, you can do that in, let's say, a couple of hours. That's because actually all the backend infrastructure is managed by Microsoft, so you don't need to deploy all the single pieces of the service. You just deploy the service, the hospitals, the VMs, and all the background, the connection broker, the web gateway, and etc. is already deployed them and provided as a service by Microsoft. You can even fast forward the deployment in less than 1 hour using automation, for example Azure DevOps and other things like Azure Image Factory. In this way, with a single click, you can deploy a full-fledged WVD environment with all the features like FS Logic, Steam's audio video redirection, and your custom-built image. Those was the top 5 benefits and reasons to, in my belief, seriously consider the deployment of Windows Virtual Desktop, not only for the service itself, like for example, replacing the traditional RDS deployment, but also to build very interesting and advanced services for your customers. Why having a top 5 reason and not add the 6th one? The 6th one is Azure Lighthouse. Azure Lighthouse is a cloud-free service that allows you to centrally manage all your Azure customers in one single location. This is the bread and butter for MSPs, but it goes very well with Windows Virtual Desktop too. That's because, let's say you have hundreds of thousands of customers that use the WVD service, then you get a nightmare in managing all these users and customers. With Lighthouse, basically you will see all your tenants, all your customers, all your resources in one location, which is your Azure portal, and do all the management from there for a single pane of view. Azure Lighthouse is not great only by itself, so the ability to manage all the customers all together, but it is also the foundation to build new extra fancy services. For example, think you want to create a cloud security operations center, you can use Azure Lighthouse in conjunction with Azure Sentinel. So you can collect and log all the security activities of your customer in a single interface and be able to have security analysts working on there. Or to be able to manage not only Azure, so managing also different clouds and even on-premise environment with Azure Arc. Again, Sentinel plus Azure Arc, you can see even all your on-premise hardware environment of your customers in your Azure portal. But this is a very wide topic for another video. To be sure to not miss it, hit the subscribe button. Thank you for watching and see you next time.